Philosophia Salomonis, Second Part. A lily among thorns, lilium inter spines. From Solomon, Wisdom, Chapter 7. To me, desiring and praying, prudence was given, and the spirit of wisdom came unto me, whom I prefer before scepters and thrones, and riches, if they be compared with her, I count as nothing, neither do I judge precious gems to be compared with her. Also every soul compared with her is almost as sand, and before her Luna is to be accounted as mire. Her I love above health and beauty, I would rather have her than light, for her brightness is unextinguished. But with her all good things came to me together, and by her works immense riches. For she is an inexhaustible treasure unto men, they that use it enter into friendship with God, being commended for the gifts of doctrine. For she is a certain vapor, a certain thing of divine power, and a pure effluence of the omnipotent, etc. After the clouds, the sun. There is an old saying or proverb, after great suffering there commonly comes great joy, so too the opposite. So it also happened to me, alas, some years ago, and it happens likewise to many others, when they first begin without a true ground or foundation, they almost fall out, as I shall relate at length hereafter. For when I thought I had the whole world in my hand, I suddenly came to have less than nothing. For my glass wherein I had now placed my welfare broke with a great crash, the matter spattered, my mute philosophers and books went this way and that again, to my great harm and loss, of which I must now refrain from saying more. Only this, from this unexpected misfortune I became greatly frozen with shock, struck dumb, and terrified, so much so that, from grief and anxiety, I did not know where I was, what I still possessed, and what I ought to do further. For all my joy, pleasure, and delight had been transmuted and changed into mere poison and bitter gall, and not into gold and silver, as I had hoped. When I had come a little to myself again, I first considered my great damage and loss, and then I set upon it with hot tears, bent knees, and heartfelt sighs, to him who lives from eternity to eternity, to lament and to lay before him, for God gives and takes as it pleases him, and to whom he will, first begging that he would now graciously accept me inwardly and have mercy on me, so far as it is possible, that he would lead, conduct, and show me the right way to the mirror of his majesty, through the spirit of truth and wisdom. This, besides, comforted me, that Dionysius Zacharias says that even the greatest philosophers at the beginning have greatly erred, and yet in the end nevertheless come well enough to a fortunate and flourishing conclusion. Now when, with these sorrowful thoughts, I had for a long time been distressed, this doubtful question also occurred to me. Whether the Almighty God would also give, impart, and make known so high a secret to us poor sinners, who now live in these last and evil times. After manifold reflection and deliberation, I finally resolved within myself upon this conclusion, that those same men who before us have had this mystery were also sinners, and obtained and possessed it not by merit, but by grace, therefore it might also now be obtained and become powerful in one who behaved devoutly and had God before his eyes just as well as they did out of grace from the dear God. This therefore gave me courage again. I took up my Philosophus, Mugos, and Mudos Regis more boldly, and especially the Count of Treves. For although I had previously read him diligently many times, yet I could find no certain ground/foundation to grasp a sure ground from it. Only now, since the hour of revelation was at hand, and as I, by reading in the very place where the matter is described, understood it, it appeared as if a fiery little spark, like Caliber, were leading me out of the place where the power of the work lay, and bringing me forth. At first I was frightened, but afterwards, when I looked on, the eyes of my understanding were opened, and I could now indeed see and understand that which I had formerly been blind to and which I had so long desired. Therefore I rejoiced heartily, thanked God with earnest prayer that he would further instruct me, by what means I might attain the goal of the great work. Therefore I soon resolved to travel in search of the materia, whether it is to be found everywhere, so that I might obtain the nearer and not the more remote, for one is richer than the other, and both may aim toward one goal, as Georgius Ripley explains in his Axiomata of the 12 Gates, and also Flammel, folios 120, 150, at the end, his verbis. But this above all is most hidden, from what mineral thing the near one ought to be made. Now as I was on my way and my heart was full of thoughts, it happened that, between two mountains, I met a fine, venerable, old peasant man. He was clothed in a long grey cloak or coat, on his hat he had a black ribbon, at his neck a white field sign, a yellow belt around his body, and besides this, red boots on his feet. After I had greeted him and came nearer to him, I perceived that he held in his hand 2 star-shaped flowers with 7 rays, the one white, the other red, and as I looked at them, they were very beautifully shining in their colors, lovely in smell, and sweet in taste. Moreover, the one was of female, the other of male sex, yet both grew from one root and from the influence of all the planets. I asked the peasant what he intended to do with these flowers, for I indeed knew them both well enough, yet I did not know that they had a distinct opinion as a male and female, that is, that they were of 2 different natures. At first he looked at me, saying, "Who had directed me to this unusual place? For the greatest men of this world seek this, but it is closed and sealed to them." But when I told him my wondrous course of life, of which I had mentioned something before, he laughed, spoke again kindly with me, and said, "You must know that no one can come to the knowledge of these flowers, unless he be predestined thereto, or else brings it about through his earnest prayer and strong, firm faith, and even then it is not given to him without great toil, care, and tribulation, as you yourself must confess, and this precisely so that those who have it may remember it, and learn to hold such a mystery so much the more high and secret. But since you have now come so far, I show you by the promise of the divine power and by permission that from these 2 flowers, only after their conjunction does there truly come to be the prima materia of all metals, and not before. Concerning this, see Count Bernhard, Folios 45, almost at the end of the second part of his book. There he names these 2 flowers a red man and a white woman. But the philosophers have always written of the prima materia for weighty reasons, namely, to conceal its root from the unlearned, and have wholly and deliberately kept silent about the secunda materia, for you must first take into your hand the secunda materiam, which is crude and is the very subject of the stone, and from it you must draw man and woman, and only then, after the conjunction, does it become prima materia, which I here faithfully disclose to you." I marveled at his speech and was also glad that in many points he agreed with me. Therefore I said further to him that I had truly not sought such high wisdom in him, since he looked so plain and simple. He smiled and said, "For that very reason the whole world errs and is blind, for my outwardly lowly form commonly deceives them. But if they could, in friendly fashion, pull off my old grey cloak, as you well know, then underneath they would find a shining adamantine armor and a ruby breast shirt. Yet the Most High has sealed all this beforehand from many of them, so that they must not reflect upon from what all metals take and have their origin." I answered him to this, "My dear little peasant, these flowers have a glorious shine, yet are they also already medicinal?" He said, "Yes, they are indeed medicinal, but their great power lies hidden within them. For so long as they still lie in the root, they are very poisonous, therefore the root must first be sublimed very gently and quite softly, little by little. You know the sublimation of the philosophers already, otherwise I would have mentioned it, without any foreign sharp thing that might spoil their growing power and nature, otherwise it is of no use. Then these 2 splendid flowers grow without the addition of other things distinctly out of this poisonous mountain. And if I had not known," said he, "under which planet the peasants are constellated, born/inclined, then I too would not have come upon this wondrous place, nor would I have obtained knowledge of such a secret. Believe me certainly." I then continued, "My dear friend, you tell me of strange things, tell me also whether these 2 flowers grow at one and the same time together, or what manner of form/condition belongs to it, for I think the greatest art lies in this point, and I also hold the resolution very highly, because the philosophers do not make many words about it." The peasant, when I said this, shook his head and was silent for a while, but at last he began and said, "As it seems to me, you are very eager about these matters, yet I do not blame you for it at all, but be satisfied this time with my manifold report, for this is precisely the stumbling stone, on which most people stumble. There are indeed many who know the true matter, but this grasp is hidden from them. Yet come here again tomorrow at this time, and I will also be here, and as far as is granted to me will reveal it to you, teach you, and make it known. I thanked him most highly for his faithful report, took my leave of him with joy, and awaited the following day with great longing. I did not delay, but found myself in time again at the place. The peasant was already there too, and had the 2 flowers in his hand. I wished him all good and reminded him of his yesterday's promise. With respect, since I knew what might be of service to him, I wished in everything to please him. He answered that he well remembered this, and would also fulfill his promise. But, he said, I could serve him nowhere, rather I should know, if I were with God in the matter, then he would also be my friend, if not, then he would be my enemy, for he must follow the command of the Most High and be obedient, and I should let it rest at that. He continued, Hear, you child of man, now I will briefly repeat my discourse from the beginning, and will fully relate and teach you the whole process, with all requirements and circumstances. But you must pay close heed to it, and after prayer ponder my words well and often, otherwise my meaning will hide itself from you in your mind without your knowing it, and will lead you onto false and erroneous paths, for it is a gift of God Most High, believe me for certain. And now listen, let us sit down upon this green grass, for I am old and cold by nature, and I have also harm in my leg, therefore I cannot stand long, besides, I gladly rest in the green. You have without doubt read that our magi, philosophers, and kings write and cry out, Follow nature. From this know that he who wants to bring anything forth in this art must first truly know and understand the origin, birth, distinction, friendship and enmity of all metals. And understand further. All metals grow from one root, and their first matter is one and the same. They differ only in this, that one is purer than another, and also more cooked and digested. All this is written and shown in all the philosophers' books, in which the truth alone is, and not in the written, boastful, false recipes or processes. You may surely believe this. He who wishes to know this cause, ground, and foundation, let him not grow weary of reading it. For he who wishes to feel the benefit must also feel the burden. It would be far too long for me to relate all these things. And when I have now fully instructed you, you will not see and speak with me again until you have brought the work to its end. Then I will speak with you much more kindly, and you will also at that time know me better, love me more firmly, and in higher honor than now, to hold me in honor, and after that we shall not soon be parted, be content with that. Further, you must also be sensible of this. He who understands the origin of the metals will also well know that the matter of our stone must be metallic. Yet it is no metal, nor any single mineral, but metals and minerals, and minerals and metals. For their whole kind and nature is in one thing, which is called electrum minereale immaturum, magnesia or lunaria, therefore the philosophers always use the plural metalla, metallorum, metallis, etc. I need not speak more plainly, it is also unnecessary, since the matter is already known to you. Otherwise some might hear of it, for around this mountain very many seekers lie in wait, some come quite near, some even climb up, but I do not let myself be easily seen by them together with the flowers, lest it be commanded to me, i.e., lest trouble come of it. This mineral root must, as has already been said, be gradually separated from its unart, its bad/impure nature, which it has received from poisonous vapors, and then the white mercurial lily juice must be pressed out of it. This is very hard and volatile, therefore one must seek it in its upper part, and its name is azoth or gluten aquili, glue of the eagle. But the sulphureous, unburnable, fixed red lily juice you must not allow to be sought in the lower part, and it is called Latin or Leo rubeus, the red lion. Now you have, according to your desire, my explanation. Ask no further, for to explain such things is to me strictly bound up and forbidden. Therefore pray diligently, it will also be granted to you. And it is especially to be wondered at that these flowers never wither or fade, and the one can transform itself into every kind of form and shape, and also loves all the planets, so that it is united with them. And one can never again be brought out of this planetary house with which it is bound. To describe thoroughly and forever the virtue, nature, and property of these flowers is beyond any man's heart, mind, and courage, all the wise must confess that. Now these 2 flowers stand, as you see, upon a 7-fold stem, of all manner of colors, yet they have withdrawn rather far from one another. This is caused by their differing nature. Therefore one must find a means by which they may grow together, and from these two there may grow forth, break out, and spring up a glorious fruit unfading and enduring forever, which cannot happen without the will of God. But you must also further know that the number/measure of the white lily seed in comparison with the red is very unequal. The wise have kept this deeply hidden, and call it their pondus or weight. And without this point the two lilies will neither unite nor communicate together even per minima, in the least degree. The most ancient Arabs write of this thus: "Let the weight of the male always be singular, and of the female plural." The Count explains this when he says, "The earthly power, overcoming what resists it, and according to the resistance, the action of the agent is extended in the other matter." Do you understand that? I answered, "It is somewhat dark." He said, "Do not trouble yourself so violently about this, for when you come to the awakening of these two lilies, you will then see for yourself out of the property and nature of them both how you must deal with it, and you must use a gradual, moderate heat, otherwise the seed of the white lily will smoke out like a vapor, and all your toil and labor will be in vain." I continued, "You always speak of these two lilies, yet the philosophers sometimes speak of one thing only, as that in Mercury or Azoth lies all that the wise seek. They also speak of three, as salt, sulfur, mercury, and most often that it is body, soul, and spirit, but you are not thinking of this at all." "I must laugh at you," said he, "that you do not yet understand the philosophical terms, or perhaps you want to test me, yet I will also relieve you of that. When they speak of one thing, it is the salt of the metals, sal metallorum, the philosopher's stone, lapis philosophorum. When I speak here of two things, it is body and soul, corpus and anima. The third is the coupling of both, namely the spirit, spiritus, which you cannot see, yet it is hidden in both, and then hovers upon the water, as you may read in Moses, Genesis 1. Let yourself be content with this, but I gladly remain with these two. Therefore take these two lilies, quite purely separated/cleansed, and lock them up in a crystal vessel, very tightly, without fire, set them into a gentle sweat bath, Schweißbad. Then the white lily will soon spread itself wide, and will seize and enclose the red. But because the red is of a more fiery nature, and receives help from the external warmth, therefore let it also bring forth its present bomb-like scent into the coldness of the white. Through this they become at odds, for neither will yield or give way to the other. This comes from their contrary qualities, as you well know. Both rise up as far as heaven, but are driven down again by the wind, and this happens several times, until, from the labor of rising and descending, they become weak, weary, and must rest upon the earth. And know, if the bath is not so governed that their two natures do not rise up equally, but only one alone, then you will never enjoy or partake of their fragrance. Therefore take good heed of this first operation. But because these two enemies feel and perceive that neither can prevail over the other, they unite again with such love and friendship that they now desire to remain with one another forever. In this union the whole firmament is moved, likewise sun and moon, in such a manner that they also are darkened, as long as it pleases the Most High. After this, God out of love makes in the air his bow of all kinds of colors, as a sign that you should then not doubt, God is gracious to me and will not permit the drowning or flood of these two. Of this you may rightly rejoice. You will also in a short time see that the moon gradually comes forth again and is not as black as before, and at last shines again and glitters very white, and becomes beautifully clear, but the sun is still be hidden behind the moon, which you cannot well see because of the earth. But if you have clear eyes of understanding, you will perceive 4 planets in the moon, which, through the moon's brightness, you can change and transmute in their constant nature. But when Sirius, or the dog star, draws near to the sun and the heat becomes ever greater and more violent, then the moon is darkened by the sun's brightness until at last it also hides itself behind the sun's splendor. This splendor, because of the uncleanness of the other planets, is greatly provoked, and in anger becomes yellowish, and finally blood-red. Yet because they humble themselves before him as their Lord, since God has so ordained it, he receives them again into grace and makes them all alike, so that they always remain and rule with him in his kingdom. Therefore they all rightly rejoice, give thanks, and praise beside him the Most High, by whose permission they are so gloriously governed, and they also hope to daily proclaim and employ such adornment to the praise of his great divine name. See, now I have freed you from your doubt. I hope you will now understand the matter completely. Thank God, your and my Creator, for it, and in quietness know how to apply yourself to this high work and to promote it. But pray diligently, use it rightly, or else you will neither see nor find me again, etc. Truly I did not know, for joy, what I should answer the peasant, yet I was heartily thankful, and asked him further quite friendly whether then now there were nothing more to do in this, and whether the art had now reached an end. He answered me quite gently. You must know that the virtue of these 2 lilies can be renewed and increased every 3rd day, so that they may take 1,000-fold of their power and seed themselves. And when this seed is planted and cast into the former earth, then on the 1st day their darkness occurs, on the 2nd day the bright moonlight comes, on the 3rd day the evening red sun comes forth again. And this work proceeds so long as it pleases the Most High. Also, out of the nature of these flowers there come forth precious stones and pearls, but the highest thing is what concerns you men, namely, to further knowledge of God and a long life. And if one only enjoys a little leaf of it, he will soon be healed of all infirmities and diseases. But of their magical power and other high secrets I cannot now speak. Rather, when I come to you again after the completion of your work, then will I let you come to and share much more of their virtue, properties, and circumstances. For now you must be content with this and rightly measure my discourse. You will, next, by God's permission, be granted all that you desire. And since I have now profitably carried out my command, I must part from you again, yet you will think of me, and await my coming again after some months. My dear brother and best friend, said I, you speak so excellently and so ingeniously about these high matters, it truly seems to me that you cannot be a bad peasant though outwardly you look to be one. Besides, you can speak splendid Latin, that is not something I am used to among peasants. So tell me, at which university did you learn such things? For you are very highly advanced, and I have never yet met your like. The peasant began to smile, and said, What moves you to such a question? I answered him, because I would like to know whether you learned it at universities, since they imagine they have the true philosophy. It amazes me, said he, what dreams you allow yourself. Do you think philosophy or wisdom is to be sought or found among their very teachers? Truly, no. But as for my wisdom, I have it only from him through whose word and command the heavens, the firmament, the earth, and all things must tremble and quake. Therefore I have also already told you how inwardly I am adorned with gold, diamond, emeralds, and rubies, and that I wear only the grey cloak to hide and cover myself from the mighty, since they mean to seize me and to compel me, girded about me. I asked further, why do the great lords and potentates not seek this philosophy among their philosophers, whom they must maintain yearly with great pay at the universities? He answered, about this question I would have longed to discourse, but they are not worthy that one, for their sake, should lose so many words over them, because they do not wish to be instructed or taught, therefore they also cannot endure length with their useless, trifling arguments and empty reasonings. God is very angry with them, because they bespatter the youth with their sophistical things. They teach and dispute always about goat's wool, about mere trifles. And when the disputation comes to an end, one is as clever as the other, and all have equally much, namely, a great vapor/fume, hot air. Therefore beware of their vain, poison-loving fantasies and pretenses. They chatter much about the shell and do not know that there is a kernel in it, which is the best. They teach the youth the arts of speaking, or rather they hammer in grammar, everything else is mere trade in spectacles. If they were not doctors or masters, they would still perhaps practice themselves in the true philosophy, but now they are ashamed of it, because being graduated persons they should still learn. Therefore the true philosophy must, under the appearance of the false, be innocently condemned, most harshly persecuted and slandered. Yet so it must go and happen, that God's wisdom before the world is called folly, and the contrary likewise. For God, not without serious judgment, willed that wisdom should be revealed under the name of foolishness, so that the mystery of his power might indeed be secret, but at last our good cause will triumph. And we esteem them far less than they think, we can also do without them far sooner than they can do without us and get on. I said, my dear little peasant, I can truly also confess that I am of the same opinion, for in dear truth I say that outside the university I have learned far more than among the pseudo-philosophers, who have also been very much against me, for the matter is too small, i.e., too contemptible in their eyes. No, said the peasant, enough of that, and besides, I soon have time to return again to my former place. But now, said I, you will not part from me so, my dear brother, rather, out of friendly entreaty, grant me yet one question, and let it be of such a sort that it may make me capable, then I will gladly be satisfied although I am heartily thankful for everything, so be it. I do not know, said he, whether it might be such a question that I may grant it to you, it might also be that it would now be forbidden to reveal it to you. Yet speak on. The wise philosophers, said I, all write that the greatest art lies in the governing of the fire, since it must be held unequally, and then I would also gladly like to know what the nearer or nearest matter of the stone is, from which I should extract the forma specifica, or the two flowers or could. For although I know a materia generalis, I am yet uncertain about the foregoing point, for Klanger writes that scarcely half a lot can be extracted out of a whole pound, by which the work could be accomplished that would be very little. But I hold rather that several lot out of 1 pound should be able to be prepared both of the white and of the red. He answered, I see well what is going on. You want to know too much and do not yourself wish to seek and work. No, my brother, nothing will come of that. It is called lilium inter spines, a lily among thorns. If one imagines it can be plucked so easily, one tears one's hands. Therefore, with diligence and labor, one must first little by little clear away the thorns, and then go cleanly about the splendid lilies, so that at last one may enjoy them. Besides, you are mixing two questions together, and yet you desire only one. But I can indeed tell you this, that you should well consider the 4 parts of the year, and accordingly divide your work. Concerning this the books of the wise treat sufficiently. You also see that in the dog days it is hotter than in spring, in winter colder than in summer. Some will laugh and say that even children know such things. Yet, my companion, you still do not know what the philosophers, winter and summer are. Only do not run ahead too quickly, you will come to it in due time. I cannot tell you more of this. And since you might at first make mistakes, which, however, will scarcely happen, I will now teach you a means by which you may richly make good your loss, and in the meantime have and obtain abundant nourishment. Behold, under this grey coat I have a green undergarment. If you polish it with flints, feuersteinen, iron rust, and a red-figured eagle, then my green undergarment becomes much more splendid. This you shall sink into the pure moonshine, then the moon will take 6 lot from the sun and receive it, and she will give and impart the same to you for nourishment. And you can enjoy this almost every 8 days. Reckon it up, a great lord could from this, if he drives it strongly, be richly fed and sustained, and it costs almost nothing. This you shall keep secret, and be thankful to God for it. Now farewell. And as he said this to me, the peasant sprang up and quickly hurried away into the mountain. And the 2 flowers remained and stood in the same place where the peasant had gone in. I hastened to pluck them, but then they dodged back and forth before my hand, and when I reached hastily to seize them, behold, in their place there lay before me a piece of several pounds of the crude and true matter of the stone. And a voice went out from the mountain, saying, God sells his good things for labors. After that I heard and saw nothing more. Then I fell there upon my knees, thanked and praised him who lives from eternity to eternity, who is wisdom itself, that he would fill and enlighten my heart, mind, and courage with the spirit of wisdom, so that I might become partaker of such a dear, high, and precious treasure, and obtain it. And I further promised and vowed to use such things to the honor of his holy name, for the benefit of the Christian churches, and especially for my neighbor and dear poverty, use it for good and for the best. Thus have you now, my love, the true ground of the highest of this dear and precious treasure, with all circumstances in rich measure. Do as I do, be of good endeavor, avoid sophists, and keep God before your eyes, then you will not so often labor in vain, but will wondrously see and perceive God's works, whose name be praised and blessed from eternity to eternity. Amen. Ask, and it shall be given you. Happily finished in the fortress/citadel, Seoul, ALCHEMY, in the year of salvation 1598, July 9th, Old Style. The second part. After I had now thanked the eternal Almighty God and Creator of all things for His gracious revelation, and had praised and extolled Him from my heart, I took my materia secunda to myself, the prima materia will come afterward. I kissed it for joy, as that which I had so heartily longed and desired after, and for whose sake I had stood for so many years in doubt, affliction, sorrow, sadness, and trouble. I looked upon it with great wonder, especially because it had no special outward appearance, and yet it should be able to carry out and accomplish so high, weighty, supernatural a work. Then it came to my mind what the peasant had said, that God had given and made it such an outward appearance for highly important reasons, namely also so that the poor as well as the rich might have it, and so that they might not complain of God nor lament, as if God had given the rich some advantage in this. No, truly, the rich do not esteem it, and believe far less that such a thing lies hidden in it, as is to be read in Rosario Magno, folios 248. If we were to name our matter by its proper name, the foolish and the rich would not believe it to be such. Thus the poor obtain it sooner into their hands than the rich. Now when I had well wrapped up and kept my matter, I went home again with joy, and on the way I sang the following little song, ch. 7, of The Wisdom of Solomon. Where is a God like our God, who can help out of all distress? I was sorrowful, now I am joyful. When I was now at home, I resolved, first, to prepare a reasonable stock of the particular, as the kind peasant had taught me, so that I might, with the better means and steadiness, wait for and prepare the universal. Therefore, in God's name, I began. I bought myself a reasonable supply of coal, for it consumes much coal, built for its suitable furnaces and ovens, and in a short time, within some weeks, made a decent provision. But the enemy of Christians could not endure this. He stirred up one offense after another, and in every corner, the neighbors complained of me that I would set their houses on fire. My friends and other acquaintances suggested to me that there was now false coin about and in circulation, and that I ought to refrain from such useless doings and undertakings, so that I might not fall under suspicion and instead apply myself seriously to my juridical faculty, since I was a doctor of laws, by which I could otherwise have had plentiful nourishment. But whether by that means I could earn my bread with a good conscience, I unfortunately doubted greatly. Next came that the common smiths and gold workers accused me before the council, saying that I was making the coal dearer for them, that they could not have their craft and civic sustenance, and therefore, consequently, could not pay the council and community of my city any rent or tax because I paid more for the coal so that I might have it before them. They carried this on so long that the council had it forbidden to me, and afterward announced that I should desist from dealing, trading in coal and conduct myself according to my calling. In sum, the matter went so far that I had to tear down my ovens, move away from there, and seek a good friend who would advance me such money, so that I might wait for the universal the more quietly, yet I told no one what I had in mind. This tribulation, together with journeys and other troubles, lasted almost until the 3rd year. God knows how it went to my heart, that I knew it all and yet could not still set my hand to the work. I thought to myself in this way and that way, perhaps God does not yet will it, nor permit it. For whither fate draws and draws us back, thither we must follow. As the Count of Teruis also indicates, he had already known the whole science of the universal for 2 years completely, and yet, because of many impediments and hindrances, could not set himself to the work nor bring it to completion. Therefore I commit all such things to dear God. On my journey I conferred with learned people, became ever more understanding, pursued mutual labors with arts and learning, as is commonly done. I also gathered together fine materials of all sorts of ores and hand stones. Yet I found very few of them, indeed not above 3, that walked on the right philosophical path and were so disposed. All of them wanted to add to it common mercury, gold, antimony, speceglass, cinnabar, and other such lesser, needless things, in which they all greatly erred, because they did not work according to nature nor follow her. For if they had gone after nature and had put the right things together, they would not have wandered so miserably. But such a high gift is not given to everyone, therefore let each make his reckoning and prove himself well, before damage should constrain and creep upon him. This is something that whoever can, may mark. When I had completed my course of journeys according to the fated constitution, I came home again joyfully. Then my supposed friends pressed in again, and wanted to know where I had been so long, to know what I had accomplished and how I meant to proceed. I gave them a short answer, saying, "The world is not large enough. You perhaps imagine that your city is the whole world, and that one cannot sustain oneself without it. Oh no! But if you had tried something yourselves, you would judge this quite differently. God be praised, there are still other people enough, so that what you despise and laugh at, you would acknowledge with great thanks and accept. And you should also know that I shall not trouble you much now with the business of coal, for I have no need of it at present." At this speech of mine they greatly marveled, put their heads together, yet did not know where the hare lay buried, i.e., what the real point was. But I went my way wholly and entirely at leisure, rented myself a house, kept a servant boy, and after completing prayer and thanksgiving to the eternal God, I took my resolution in hand with great desire, and did not desist until I had carried it out and brought it to completion, this being almost the chief and hardest part in the whole work. For here lies much delay, as all the philosophers write, and it is the key of the art, and it can easily, if handled with the fire, be hardened and burned, so that the florist, that is, the growing power, are scorched or burnt up. Therefore I had to use great caution, and took good heed lest I should receive any harm from its ill nature, as Theophrastus writes in his manual. But in the end everything turned out well for me, by God's will. When now the poisonous vapors had departed from the stone, our two flowers, of which the peasant had spoken, came forth gently, yet I noticed the white sooner, for the red was not yet so highly advanced, nor so far grown out. I took a little leaf from the white one and tasted it, and truly I felt an exceeding sweet, glorious, lovely flavor, the like of which I had never tasted. Thereat I rejoiced heartily. The rest of that little leaf I laid upon a hot plate of metal, then it melted at once and all of it smoked away immediately. By this I perceived that it was the female, because it was so fugitive and volatile. Therefore great caution was also needed, if I was to gain power over the red lily as well, which in no wise regards the fire, but rather continually rules over the fire. Yet before I could take hold of these two lilies, I had a good deal of adversity, of which I will not speak here. But it was not long before, having taken these two lilies in hand, I forgot it, thought of the peasant, and marveled at his high, ingenious understanding. I held to his instruction, and joined the two lilies together in a friendly manner, and thereby I perceived a remarkable wonder. After that I enclosed them both in a crystal vessel, without great heat, only moderately. And when the sun began to shine, the white lily spread out as though it were nothing but pure, clear water, like the morning dew upon the grass, or like a tender tear of the eye, very bright, like the clear moonlight, yet with a reflection somewhat bluish. And as I looked closely thereto, behold, she had taken the red flower into herself and swallowed it up, so that I could not see a single little leaf of it. Yet she could not hide it for long, for the red lily is of a hotter and drier complexion, but the white is of a colder and moister nature. And when, for the red one, the outward sunshine came to its help, it strove to come forth again, yet it still could not, because of the strength of the white, whose nature at that time still ruled. Nevertheless they fought mightily. Both grew up together toward the heavens, but were again driven down by the whirlwinds. This continued until they both, below, because the growing root had escaped them, were bound together, and had to remain so, for only then are they the prima materia of the stone and of the metals. After this, the darknesses began gradually to show themselves, and Sol and Luna were darkened ever more blackly. This lasted a considerable time, as is to be read in the count. Meanwhile there appeared to me also the sign of grace, the rainbow with all manner of splendid colors, of which the peasant said it would be a sign of joy and a presage of a good end. But when the moonlight began to show itself somewhat yet not fully bright, then the sun began to shine more hotly, until the moon became full, and shone completely, clear and transparent, as though it were nothing but transparent pearls and coarsely crushed diamonds. At this the four planets rejoiced, for they can, through by this way from all their degeneration are transformed into the moon's splendor and nature. This the Count in his parable of the king's garment calls thus. When now I applied to the third degree of fire, then there grew all manner of glorious fruits of quinces, citrons, oranges, apples pleasant to behold, out of a hyacinthan soil, which in a short time transformed themselves into red and lovely apples of paradise, growing out of a ruby-like earth, and finally changed and coagulated into a glorious bright and ever-shining carbuncle stone, which makes all darkened and dusky-colored planets shine and appear with its own proper splendor, and that in a very short time. Now when I had made several projections upon many pounds of purified metals, and rejoiced and marveled exceedingly that so small and altogether little a quantity of our stone should have such great power, namely to penetrate and transmute all metals incontinenti, immediately, at once, without delay, even 1 part upon 1,000 parts, I therefore sat down, and after performing prayer and thanksgiving was willing yet to make another projection, whether I might come nearer to the foundation of the projection. And as I was just about to set to work, behold, there came my old dear little peasant again to me through a closed door, greeting me kindly. At first I was astonished, for I did not recognize him so quickly, since he came upon me so suddenly, and he was now clothed in a variegated coat with all manner of colors clothed. I sank down upon the bench, for my legs trembled. He spoke with a laughing mouth and friendly gestures. "Fear not, my dearest brother, you have a gracious God, and also what your heart desires on this earth. I now come again to you, as I promised and vowed, to inform you further in these and other higher and wondrous matters, and in secret things, for this is only the beginning, and to teach you thoroughly. Therefore hear further, that it is a small, plain, and easy thing, as you must now yourself confess, to make the lapidem the stone. This the eternal God has thus ordained for weighty reasons, but to understand it rightly and perfectly, for that, all philosophers, even Adam, Solomon, and Hermes, likewise Theophrastus, Paracelsus, however wise they may be, must bow and bend, and openly confess their inability in this point. As indeed Zacharias also, who likewise made the lapidem, the stone, often bears public witness in folio 71, and says, "The knowledge of our medicine is so divine and so supernatural indeed in the second operation, that it always has been and still is impossible to make this known to men by whatever study or industry, although they may be the wisest of all and the most learned philosophers, unless they are first inspired by God, for in this part every natural reasoning and experience fails. That is, our art, our science is so divine and supernatural, understand this, according to the composition of the words, that it has never been possible to understand the same, by whatever means it might or could be accomplished, even by those who have been and still are the wisest, unless they have first been enlightened by God. For in this point all sense and natural reason fail us. But so that you, as I have promised, may be further instructed and informed in this matter, I will, so far as is now granted and permitted to me, to reveal and to make known, teach you thoroughly and make it clear to you. Then you may, according to my guidance, diligently apply yourself to the Almighty and Most High with earnest prayer, for from him come all treasures of wisdom. Then without doubt, as Rex Salomon, King Solomon, testifies in his Book of Wisdom in the 7th and 8th chapters, you will be illuminated and endowed with high understanding and deeper wisdom, for the eternal God willingly allows himself to be asked for it, and gladly gives it, as he has done before to others, to those who from the heart long for it and intend to use such a high gift to the honor of God, for their salvation, and for the benefit of their neighbor and the poor. But since I have perceived that you have dealt somewhat unskillfully with the projection or casting forth of the tincture, you must be informed that you should first thoroughly purge and cleanse the metalla of their adjuncts, added things, and adhering accidents, clinging incidental properties, that is, of their sulphureous impurities, before you perform the projection, otherwise you will cause damage to suffer that. But how such cleansing should be done you have it, in the books of the philosophers, and it is done as follows, etc. And as he said this, he seized a piece of copper, placed it in a crucible, threw a purging powder upon it, and with an iron crooked wire drew off for me its stinking red, combustible, and loathsome sulfur, because it hinders the tincture from entering, often drawing it off like slag from it until the Venus became pure and the slags turned whitish. And when I then projected my tincture upon it, it penetrated and went quickly in at that very instant, and the whole corpus veneris became splendid good gold, better than natural Hungarian gold, at which I then greatly rejoiced and thanked him for his faithful report. After that he also related to me the purifications/cleansings of other metals and, their cleansing, which to attempt was a fine pleasure and refreshment. He further informed me, saying, "You must also know and understand that with the white fire stone you can make all kinds of precious stones that have a white gleam, such as diamonds, white sapphires, emeralds, pearls, and the like. With the yellow stone, however, before it becomes deep red, you can make all kinds of yellowish stones, such as hyacinths, yellow diamonds, topazes, but with the red stone you can prepare and make carbuncles, rubies, garnets, spinels, which also far surpass the oriental ones in nobility, virtue, and splendor. All this I will later show you myself, and show it by hand, lest it be easily overlooked, but now I will let you see a wondrous secret. Yet first you must close the windows and not be terrified at it, but rather rejoice in the lofty nature and power implanted in you by God." I said, "My friend and dearest brother, would very gladly learn and see such a thing, and for it also be thankful to my Creator, for it will serve to strengthen my faith the more, and be useful." "Sit down upon the ground," said he. Thereupon he took 7 dishes and prepared them, first cleansing them according to the number of the 7 planets. Upon each dish he formed the character or sign of the planet that belonged to it, then he placed the 7 planets upon it, where the signs were, and let one after another according to their particular constellation as the requisites, required conditions, demanded flow from the dish into a crucible until they ran together, and he let 7 little drops of our oil drip and fall into it. Then at once a lovely, shining, column-like vapor went up from the crucible and spread over the whole room with such radiance and splendor that I was terrified. And truly I saw such a wonder, secrets and arcana, together with the appearance of all the planets and of the whole firmament, which circulated around as they go above. To tell this does not suit any manner of wise man. I would never have believed that such wonders could be in our stone, if I had not seen it myself, and it may well be that a man receives heavenly understanding from it because he could accomplish such loftiness in dead things. My little peasant related to me, besides, the great secret of these matters, namely, that I could know how many true philosophers there are at the present time in the world who possess the lapis, the stone. I could know them all, and they would also at once make acquaintance with me. He also taught me further, that if I would use 9 little drops or little grains for 9 days, one after another, I would be endowed with angelic understanding and would esteem myself to be in paradise. How then, from the masses, I heard much from him of this wonder, things which I would never have believed, if I had not seen it myself, but experience is 1,000 witnesses. Now after all this, he said, a great and supernatural wonder I will yet show you, and thereafter relate the many effects, workings, power and virtue of our blessed stone, and then at last I will resolve, unravel, and explain all doubtful speeches, enigmas, riddles, and the equivocal/double-meaning sayings of the philosophers, by which so many people are misled. Lastly, I also wish to add some process that set forth the true ground, so that you may see that if you had first rightly understood the philosophers, you could have come to the end much sooner in time. And such deficiency lies in the matter, in the understanding of the first resolution, dissolution, or loosening, and then also in the right composition, as you will hear. Then some philosophers have, in 378 days, also in 30 days finished the same and brought it to a fortunate end. And after he had said this, we gathered a large vessel with rain water and let it putrefy for a certain time. After that we have, per cohobationem, by cohobation, repeated distillation/pouring back, separated the clear bluish efficibus from the dregs/lees, and put it into a clean wooden open tub, bucket, or vat, and set it in the sun. Then at once we let 1 little drop of our blessed and incombustible oil drip into it. Then there came darkness successively over the whole abyss, just as happened on the first day of creation. Afterwards, we added the 2nd little drop, then immediately the darkness was extinguished and separated by the light. Finally we, with deliberation and at the proper times, put in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th little drops. After all this there appeared and came forth, very lovely and wondrously, everything which in prima creation mundi, in the first creation of the world, was created and made in 6 days, with all circumstances and unspeakable glories, so much so that my sense and reason are broken and taken away by attempting to relate it, and it is not fitting for me to speak further of it, to reveal and to disclose. Therefore Hermes the most wise king rightly says in his emerald tablet, thus the world was created. "O my God," said I, "what are these for high mysteries?" And I sighed from my heart, praising him who lives from eternity to eternity. He said, "With this, dear brother, you must now be content, for higher arcana secrets are not commanded to me to reveal to you this time. Pray earnestly and fervently, when then the mandatum, mandate, command, is issued to reveal more to you, then you shall with joy be further instructed by me, and I will show you far higher things, but for this time it remains so. Now let us proceed to the previously mentioned matters and consider the effects and virtues/powers of our inexhaustible spring, so that you may also in medicinal matters, in medical applications proceed rightly, and serve your neighbor, the poor, and the sick with it and bring them help. Therefore set yourself to it and note it well, since much depends upon it. But first I will speak a little of the foundation of the Trium Principium, of the 3 principles, and then proceed to the main matters. Therefore understand it thus. Just as there is one eternal, sole, almighty God, through whom all things have been and subsist, and yet in the one, God, there are 3 distinct persons, so you must also know that he has ordained this as a likeness, namely, that all things must consist in unity, yet in a threefold twofoldness, the one fleeting, the other fixed and constant, the one spiritual, the other bodily, or the one white, the other red, while the third, however, is hidden and is placed and ordained as the virtuous/active principle. From this it follows now that all things which have a permanence and are to be and remain good must, according to the likeness, flow forth from one thing and be divided into 3, and again the 3 must be composed into one, otherwise it goes against the indication of the Most High, and nothing useful comes of it. But the 3 are properly body, soul, and spirit, or heavenly, earthly, and watery, sal, sulfur, and mercurius, salt, sulfur, mercurius. And these 3 are nevertheless properly one, and together in one thing or subjectus. As in man, body, soul, and spirit, as in God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, so also in all creatures, father, mother, children. To testify to this confirmation, God, who is the most righteous and faithful according to his will, and how everything should be, created Adam, his first son, as his likeness and image, and the one man has been God's son and image respective, namely Adam and not Eve, and the whole human race is in Adam and not in Eve. Thus from the one Adam and Son of God there have become 3 things, father, mother, and children. So is it to be understood of all creatures. For the earth has been a mother of all 4-footed animals, herbs, trees, foliage, and grass, and yet at the beginning it was one single thing, namely the earth, and then in and with the earth, there was the seed. Thus God made the division of the one into 3, when he said, "Let the earth bring forth foliage, herb, and grass, and fruitful tree that seeds itself and bears fruit according to its kind, so as to multiply, each according to its likeness, with its whole power." Thus now out of the one earth 3 things have become, namely, earth, seed, and its fruit which again bears seed, there it becomes one again, and they have become 3 distinct, can never again befall them. God has willed and permitted all this to happen in order to show his almightiness and overflowing mercy, in that he wills that everything, in and according to his ordinance, shall subsist in eternity. Therefore those err very grossly who, against the course of nature and the ordination of the Most High God, would work or attempt anything in this holy art. Understand me rightly, he continued, nature can indeed be changed, so that out of silver, iron, and other metals gold is made. But there must first be a separating and casting out of that which must not enter, namely the impediment, the impurity or obstruction must first be washed away, so that the good that is within may appear freely and openly in its clarity. Then, because of the curse that went over nature when man fell, nature has become greatly corrupted, defective, and frail. Whoever, then, can remove such defect and help nature through its proper medicine, so that from it the artist prepares the plusquam perfection, more than perfection, beyond perfection, especially, that which is hidden in the dregs, sediment, he is a right true master and philosopher. For everything carries its death and life with itself about its neck, as health and sickness, and everything is healthy or sick according to that which is of its like kind, nature, and property. Thus an example from man, he is, as to his outward being, earth, or limbus terrae subtilioris, the limbus/border of the more subtle earth, and an extract of all earthly creatures. Therefore he is also called microcosmos, or the little world, and rightly so. Now for the most part man eats and drinks from the fruits of the earth, which is his mother, and from these come sickness or health. The nobler the fruits, herbs, or creatures are that have come from the earth of which man takes his nourishment, the healthier he is and remains, and the contrary is to be understood of unhealth. Now we know that no thing is more closely akin to the human body in nature, and has a more certain convenient fitness, agreement, suitability, than the metals, and chiefly the purest, namely gold and silver, which show forth their beautiful luster and permanence, for they have power to withstand the fire, which the other metals do not do, for iron rusts, copper becomes a verdigris or vitriol, lead becomes quicksilver. Also everything except gold and silver is consumed in the fire, those two endure. From this it is easy to conclude that their spirit or tincture enclosed in them has such permanence and virtue in itself, and works so in other things. Therefore these two noble metals, which are of like nature to the human body, can, if one uses them rightly and knows how to prepare them, infuse such high health into a person, so that beyond this there can hardly be anything except the threefold point of the universal way, and herbs and roots, flowers, etc., which easily spoil, become rotten and stinking, are by 1,000 degrees not to be compared with the metals. But you must not understand it according to the letters, but philosophically, as you have been informed and instructed by me in the beginning. From this it finally follows that if the two noble metals, gold and silver, are brought to their inner purity through the right natural and proper philosophical preparation, they may well be compared to the heavenly lights, the sun and moon, which with their clarity illuminate day and night, the firmament above and below. And all creatures would lose their light, radiance, and splendor, indeed would die and perish, and could not be further nourished or preserved by the other 5 planets Mars, Saturn, Jupiter, Venus, Mercury, nor by other stars, however mighty they are considered to be. From this you can now easily infer that the lesser 5 metals, lead, iron, tin, copper, quicksilver, together with all their helpers, one excepted, which has in itself the most swift property of all things, and likewise all things or species in general, whatever name they may have, or whatever may ever be devised for the health of the metals or for transmutation, cannot act against this, nor accomplish the transmutation a minor gradu ad majorum, from a lesser degree to a greater, velub imperfection ad perfectionem and puritatem, or from imperfection to perfection and purity. For always the medicine that is to be used against sickness must be much nobler and better than the defect or lack from which the sickness arises. Therefore, of necessity, the cure and transmutation of metals must be sought in another thing, only in the 2 luminaribus, luminaries, Sol Rubio, the red sun, and Luna Alba, the white moon, as the dear King Hermes rightly says, must it be sought and found as an example. The first man, Adam, was before God a living man without any sin or sickness, still less subject to the death of the body and the soul if he had remained in the order and mandato Dei, command of God. But when he transgressed the commandment, then sin and sickness came of body and of soul, so that we are now poor, wretched, mortal men, subjected to death and to the creatures, over which we previously were lords and rulers, so that we are thus slain by our own mother, the earth, and by her children who are our brothers, of one nature and essence, and are consumed and at last quite eaten up. Now although we are still men as to kind, nature, and property as before, and remain men, yet we are subjected to frailty and death, we have lost of perfection many 1,000th part, and are scarcely to be reckoned by any man as equal or worthy in form to what the first man was before the fall. Therefore the first parents, before the Most High, earnestly obtained this high medicine, the tincture of the philosophers, for the preservation of long life and the resistance of all sicknesses, by which one can accomplish such things and secrets. Some of these I have partly revealed to you, but must still partly conceal until it pleases the Highest to disclose it. But an unexperienced person might throw it back at you and say whence it comes that the metals have such a sympathy, natural affinity and correspondence, love and friendship with men, animals, and herbs, since flesh and bone, metals and minerals, stand, as far as heaven and earth, so far apart from one another in his eyes and disagree. But this is easily refuted, if one first considers and compares the original generation of man and of the metals with one another. Man is not, as the unlearned theologians and loud-crying people suppose, made by God Almighty out of a bad, impure, or common lump of earth, but rather out of the very best, most subtle extract, etc., which has been in the entire center of the earth. And believe me, the Almighty, for such a work which he created to his own image, wherein he also has set, breathed in, and implanted a little spark or ray of his eternal essence and being/substance, did not take common earth, but, as said, took it the very extract of the whole, and it is found also thus, when man is resolved into his tria principia, 3 principles, and brought to that state, that then at the end, in the composition, a red shining earth is seen, etc. The rest is lacking, the remaining things are lacking. The end.